Okay, so now I've got my painting completely dry. I made sure that even that heaviest spot right there was totally dry. This process won't work if any of this paint's wet, so we got to make sure the paint's dry. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a fresh piece of paper, and this is just regular, again, drawing paper. I made sure it was bigger than my film so that I could like print it in the middle as such. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take it over to my sink. You're going to come with me here. Take it over to my sink. I'm just going to drop it in the water. So I ran some cold water. Now I don't like to soak it a long time. I just like to run it in and run it back out basically. So I'm going to let the water drip off the corner here. It's about the best way to get a good consistent amount of moisture in your paper. If one area of your paper is too wet than another, it's going to soak up more of the watercolor than we want. So my next step then is to lay it down, and I just put it on another sheet of just scrap paper that I had. Okay. So I'm going to bring my paper over. I just have like an old apron that I use. I'm just gonna blot off the excess here. So it's not super duper wet. And now what I'm gonna do is take my film, I'm gonna flip it over now. That way the watercolor is actually contacting the paper itself. And the whole goal here is to try to get that paper to absorb the watercolor that you placed in the areas you wanted them to. So I'm just kind of smoothing it over. And the reason I like to do it this way is so you can kind of pull up the film and see if you think that it's working very well. And it's working pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more rubbing pressure to this thing. And so I'm going all over the whole image. Now if it was too much water, this would just all bleed out everywhere and it would be difficult for me to control. So now what I do is I pull this off and I've got my print. So you can see that I have a little bit of leftover paint on this film here. So what I could do is go back in here and I could just rearrange the paint however I like. Make a second print. It's not going to be exact, but it's a good way to replicate. So now in order for this to dry straight, I've got to pin it up. So I'm going to go ahead and take it over to the board, pin it up for a little bit, and let it dry.